Hi, I'm John Abbott, the producer and editor of this video, a 1968 Tiffin Columbian High School graduate. The goal of making Rewind is simply to contrast life as a high school football player, cheerleader, or marching band member today with what it was like many decades ago in the 1960s. The interviews and the before and after scenes should bring nostalgic memories to those who participated in these events during the football season.
Braden Rogo's pass complete to Al Zaquani.
Well, I'll never forget. It's etched in my memory. As a sophomore, one of the first things that we were commanded to do was our coach got mad at us because we had guys that were missing practice with blisters and other foot ailments. So they decided to toughen our feet up. We had to run a mile. We had a cinder track at the time. We had to run a mile on that cinder track barefoot, and that afternoon I remember half our team was out because they had blood blisters and other foot ailments, and it was it was, you know, you have to question sometimes people in leadership roles, and I questioned why we were doing that. But we had a guy, Clifford Hyde, who ran track, and he always ran barefoot, so it was no problem for him. I remember him running that mile. I think a lot of us were just finishing the first lap, and he was completing the mile. So that was my first introduction to Columbian football.
Go punt! Go punt!
Damian Brockington on the carry. That play is good for a first down, TIF.
Man, that's protection right there, man.
We didn't wear those in the 60s, did we?
No, what do they call that? You said suspension?
Suspension helmet
Yeah.
in the 60s?
Yeah, they had little straps going around this way and a few straps coming across the top, and yeah, you could see the top and the inside of your helmet, matter of fact, and wasn't much there. And the face guards had a lot to be desired. Well, the big face guards, that's why I didn't have them have one coming this way, because they had the big bars going across. Now they got these nice refined small bars, so you can at least see what you're doing through there instead of putting up blind things on it. But really, really nicely done. And that's what I think just overall technology does. It helps create better things and bigger things, and they computerize all this stuff, and so they see every way and angle of how things and people can get hit or injured, and then how to reduce those things, those injuries.
We were playing Bucyrus my senior year, so I was on the kickoff and receiving team. So we received the ball, and it came to me. I ran with it. I got tackled, and I saw something fall, and my helmet split right down the middle.
Nowadays, there's just to be a coach, you have to take all those classes: concussion, sudden cardiac arrest, with your CPR, first aid, fundamentals of coaching. But our trainer, we do impact testing on all of our kids. So she'll run them all through the impact testing.
What's that?
So if you suspect a concussion, there's a series of questions, a test that the kids will do prior at the beginning of the season. So we kind of got a baseline. She has a baseline to go off of to detect. Yeah. And,
So you're in trouble if you miss a question after getting your bell rung.
Yeah. Usually you can tell. Usually, yeah.
Yeah, one eye sitting over there, so I know. Your head's kind of getting. You've had a few concussions yourself, right? Right, John?
Did you guys ever have? We used to tackle with our heads.
Oh yeah, leading right in there.
Yep.
And they taught, I was telling about, they taught the head-on tackles, supposed to put your head in the guy's breastbone.
We were always taught nose on the football, head across the front. And now we're doing roll tackles.
Yeah, and take him down good there. And that's
So,
where all the
what's a roll tackle?
leg injuries come in.
Yeah. Well, you basically get them. We got donuts that will roll and different things that will roll, and the guys will come through with their head behind actually now, and you wrap and you roll. If you get here, a defensive day, we run through different tackling circuits using those new techniques.
You'll see that in the pros a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
You get a penalty.
Oh, that's right.
in a game, or?
They'll go over there, blow the whistle. Or the referee will yell as you're coming out. Maybe say for instance the receiver's coming out, and the side got the official on the side sees him coming. Say, hey, number so and so, get your mouth guard in.
They were the kind that when it got a little too wet, the sole softened up. And the sole was such that it had like plastic implants to what we screwed in the cleats.
Through your foot.
And that's what happened. When it got too wet and muddy times, maybe the one game you can handle, but the second game, by the time they get wet and soft, that screw that it screws into starts coming up into your feet. And you're out there playing in that stuff, and and you're talking about some aggravation on you a little bit. Yeah, they were terrible stuff. And what you see, and today, and I've been impressed with it. And even by the time I got to the pros and what they had, there was some pretty good stuff. And I was pretty impressed by it. But some of the guys, but when they got to the pros, they, you know, the bigger colleges, they had some good stuff.
Rubber
Molded
cleat?
cleat, yeah.
Molded
Well,
cleat.
you don't see too many of the screw-ins anymore.
Because
Well, with the artificial turf,
there it is.
yeah. Your girdle pads that we used to have to put together and your thigh pads are all made into these spandex things now. You just pull them right off.
Yeah.
Yep, and all basically you gotta do is put your knee pads in your practice and game pads.
And shoulder pads, are they narrower or
They're more, you know, you just don't have one shoulder pad, you know, everybody you have special ones that the receivers can get their hands up, you've got special ones that quarterbacks can get maybe a different, you know, better motion with their arm, you know, linebacker types may be a little thicker, your DBs may have a receiver type so they get their hands up for an interception. You know, a lot of those players are probably your receivers anyways, and DBs, same type person. So, definitely some, you know, technology advantages.
I got a set of weights one Christmas. There was no weight room. There was, you know, guys didn't lift weights back then. That came along later. There was no boosters club like they have today. It was basically just the families and the players, and you know, you just kind of figure things out on your own. It's like learning how to lift weights. There was no program. There wasn't anybody teaching us the proper way to do that. You know, nutrition and that sort of stuff wasn't much of a factor. I can remember after practice heading to Jolly's and drinking quarter root beer. You know, that was our training regimen.
Okay, so the wintertime wrestling's down there. Both these nets come down for baseball and softball, and then we got all the racks for the guys and gals to use for all their lifts. Joe Stacy puts all our lifts together. He's our strength guy. It's everything's through their. They can run it right through their phones. The kids can, and then they can update their weights, and it helps them know what they're lifting each day.
And do the coaches monitor their
yes.
weightlifting program?
Yes, sir. Then in the wintertime, we do speed camps up here. Noah runs speed camps. And I'd say you got to approach a little bit different, I would think, as a coach, maybe.
No grabbing the face mask.
No.
Like the old days, right?
Yes, I do, and I have a funny story about that. One of the guys in my class, he went on to become a very successful lawyer here in Tiffin. Same with these guys. That he had the most calm, relaxed attitude about everything. It was hard to get him riled up about anything. And we were doing a bowl in the ring, and we had actually it wasn't. I don't know if it was the bowl in the ring. But it was you had a blocker, you had a tackler, and a runner. That was the Oklahoma drill, yeah. And so you had to shed the blocker, make the tackle, and put the guy on the ground, put the ball carrier on the ground. Well, we had a tough practice. Nobody was doing it very well. The guy was supposed to be making a tackle, was missing a tackle, was getting blocked. So our coach, he just loses his mind, gets frustrated, and shaking his face mask, shaking him, and just really trying to humiliate him. Just stood there, as stoic as could be, while he's getting wailed on. And finally, when the coach's temper calmed down, he looked at him, he says, "Coach, I wasn't in there." It was somebody else. And the coach looked at him and says, "Oh, well, that's okay." He says, "You probably did something wrong that I missed, so we'll call it even." One of the other things that I think a lot of the coaching, as I think back on it, was really trying to help us develop the right kind of mentality, to be good football players, and to be a good football team. We had to toughen up. We had to learn how to work together with one another. I think it was very difficult because of the lack of training and lack of understanding of physiology, kinesiology, all these things that go into human movement, there was a lack of understanding about those things. So, you know, if you weren't big and fast naturally, then it was hard to get recognized. It was hard to become a member of the team, so to speak. So, those are things that, you know, today you have. There's a whole regimen out there. We didn't have Little League football. They have that now. They have an outstanding weight room at Columbian High School. They've got a boosters club that's done a tremendous job of raising money and really improving the enthusiasm for the sports at Columbian. You have much more involvement. And back when I played, you know, your first exposure to football, we had neighborhood teams. But your first real exposure to football was in the 8th grade. So you had the 8th and 9th grade, and then you played through college. So there might be 4 years versus 10 years that you get today. Plus you get coaching at each one of those levels. You get the opportunity to lift weights, learn proper running mechanics, proper dieting. So it's really different, and the opportunity for kids today to really reach their potential is, I don't want to say it's been maximized, but it's certainly a lot better than it was when I was going to school. Coaches are always trying to teach us the proper way to do things, and one of the problems that our defensive linemen had was they would their first movement. Your first movement when you're a down lineman is supposed to be, you try to get lower than the offensive blocker. It gives you leverage to move them one way or the other. Well, we had guys, their first movement was always straight up. So that created a problem when you were getting blocked. So our coach, one of our coaches, our line coach, decided to, Bill Michelli was his name, he decided he was gonna fix the first step problem. So he built this cage, and he ran rope around the top of it. Now the story was that he wanted to run barbed wire to make sure that nobody stood up, but he wasn't allowed to do that. So drove these stakes in the ground, ran this rope around the top of it, and you had to go through it. You had to go through it on all fours, and then you had to meet the blocker at the other end.
So I taught you to stay low.
Taught you to stay low, exactly. So Junior, who was one of our better football players, was just this bull of a guy. He was a year behind me. He was 6 foot tall, weighed 270 pounds. He was one of these guys that just had all this natural strength. He was a good athlete. And he was the one that was primarily responsible for this whole episode, because his first movement was always straight up. So the coach gets him down in the box, and they hike the football. Junior goes straight up. First movement goes straight up, and whack, hits his face right on this rope. And there's blood everywhere. And it half knocked him out. He's laying on the ground, and the coach is over there. Got a hold of his face, man, shaking his helmet, telling him, get back in there and do it right this time. So Junior, after he came to his senses, he went back in and tried it again. So the next day, this
was an NOL lineman, right?
This is an NOL lineman, yeah. And the next day we have practice. So when we come in, this is the summertime. We have 2 practices a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. We come in and we notice that box is gone. It's missing. So we're going, okay, well good, we don't have to do that today. So we go in the locker room and we're getting dressed for practice, and Michelli comes storming in and goes right over to Junior. He says, Junior, he says, where's that? He had a name for it. Where's that box at? I want to know where that box at. And Junior just looked at him and smiled. He says, Coach, the only thing I can tell you, you might want to look down in the river. The locker room was, you know, I don't. You look at it today and it's totally inadequate. What we had was totally inadequate compared to what they have today. You know, we had one guy who never washed his stuff, and I can remember that a mouse had built a nest in his jockstrap. They found his jockstrap and there was a mouse that had a nest in it.
They still have gang showers.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yep. So this will be our freshman locker room.
Do you remember putting tough skin on
Oh yeah.
in the sandbox under the stadium?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you explain that, or remember any memories of that? You just painted your foot, right?
Yeah, well, it was all about toughening your feet up to try to, you know, get beyond the blisters and things like that. We didn't have. I don't know if they do it today. If you guys did it, but wrapping ankles, we didn't do any of that.
And the parents washed the uniforms, didn't they, before the game?
Yeah.
They didn't have
Yeah.
a laundry
Well,
service, did they?
No, you had your practice stuff. Yeah, it was up to your parents. Well, we are at the time. The other thing that I would love to play today versus when we played, if for no other reason, just the opportunity to catch a football. There's more opportunities out there. I mean, when I played, if you threw the ball 10 times a game, you were opening it up. So our quarterback was Steve Noble, and Steve was a really good football player. He had a great arm, and we worked together all the time, throwing and catching the football. And so our first league game that year was against Willard, and we went over to the coach's house and we were watching film with him, and we noticed that every time there was a short yardage situation that the team was Willard, they would come out, they'd put 10 guys on the line of scrimmage, and they'd have one safety back. They did that every time. So we're watching this tape. So after we get done, we look at our coach and we say, "Hey coach, if we see them come out in that formation, can we throw the football?" And he goes, "Well," he says, "I don't know." He says, "We'll think about that." So we came up with this audible that we would call a color in the huddle, and if we called a different color at the line of scrimmage, whatever followed that was to change the play. So for me, it was my number was 82, and we'd come up the line. The first time we come up against this 10-man line, I look down the line at Steve. Steve winks at me and he goes, "Blue 82." And there wasn't a guy within 10 or 15 yards of me, and I basically could have walked into the end zone. So we did that. We had a lot of success that night. They took the gazebo that was from the old Monroe Street School, and that bell tower was, well, we call it a gazebo now, but my dad found they had taken it down when they tore the building down to build a new high school. and he saw the bell tower laying on the ground, and he went and asked him, the guy who was running the job, what they were going to do with it. He said, well, we're just going to throw it away. So my dad worked out a deal with the guy to get it to our house, and the bell that was in the Old Monroe Street School became the Victory Bell, and then they have that in the courtyard at the high school. So after every home game that we win, the tradition is that we go in and ring that bell. And that was always one of the things that I look forward to, was that run out onto the field in front of the fans with the band playing the fight song. That was always an exciting moment. So the guy had a pedigree, and he had a good career in refereeing. So we're playing Bellevue, our senior year. As I said earlier, we were both undefeated. Whoever won the game was going to probably win the NOL. We hadn't beaten Columbian had not beaten Bellevue in I don't know how many years. So it was a big game. So the halftime score is 0-0. We give up 2 touchdowns to them. The score is 14-0. And we had a pretty good offense that year. Bellevue had not been scored on in the league. And there's about 4 minutes left in the game. We finally take it down the field and score the extra points. The score is now 14-8. So we kick off to them, and the clock stops. And they had this field that they have a nice field now and a nice stadium, but this place was it was a junkyard, their old stadium and their old field, and they had one of these old antiquated clocks. The clock stops, so the only way they can tell time is that they have to keep it on the field. And as I said, we had scored, kicked off to them, and comes over and tells us, okay, we're going to keep the time on the field. The clock's not working. And we said, okay. He said, well, we will make sure that you know exactly how much time is left in the game. So like I said, we had kicked off. There was about 4 minutes left. They ran 3 plays. We stopped them. They had to punt to us. We get the ball back. There's a couple minutes left in the game. We drive it right down the field. We get inside the 10-yard line. And comes over, waves his hands, and says the game is over. And we're going, what do you mean? You were supposed to tell us how much time was left on the clock, because there is no doubt in my mind that we were just about ready to take it in and score again, at least tie it up. And the game's over. So he turns around and gets off the field, and our coach, Dick Buddorf, I've never seen him so angry. And our AD was a gentleman named Gene Foster, and Coach Buddorf is heading to the locker room after this referee, and I don't know what he's going to do to him, but it ain't going to be nice. And Gene Foster's got a hold of him and trying to stop him, and he's dragging Gene Foster across the field, going after him. Well, there wasn't anything we could do about it, but I really believe we got homered that night.
What I can tell you is that unlike today, today's marching bands, we primarily played complete marches at football games. the Columbian band at that time musically was using an Ohio State University cadence. So when we marched in parades or on the field or wherever, our cadence was the same as the Buckeye Marching Band at Ohio State. Now today, I know Columbian, maybe for the last 20 years, has used a cadence that's much different. And I think it was influenced by a band director some time ago who may have gone to Ohio University. I'm not sure, you might want to check on that. But we had the same fight song, which was Illinois Loyalty. It's the fight song of the University of Illinois. And we played it with great vigor. And those of us in the band, particularly the guys I know, love to really play loud and blast. And the band, of course, then is now enthusiastically supported the football team. When Columbian High School was located at the present site of East Junior High School, when it was on Market Street, traditionally the band would form at the old Columbian High School, march down to Washington Street, march all the way down the center of town to Union Street down to the stadium. And in those days, I was a kid, grade school kid in the 50s. It was very exciting to be shopping or be downtown on a Friday night football game because you'd follow the band down to the stadium. It was pretty cool, and the whole town sort of get fired up, follow the band down to the game. When we relocated to what is now Columbian High School, the new one, the pattern was to form in front of the school on Monroe Street, march a block down to Charlotte Street, and then down the hill to the stadium. And that was quite an entrance. Today's band is an exciting band. They're cadenced, and the students are very fired up. We were too in our own way, but it was quite a bit more conservative, I think, in terms of our approach. Probably numbered in my 3 years in the early 60s between maybe 60, possibly 80 members. Later on, when the school population increased in the 70s and 80s, well over 100. And Mr. Hawk had quite a large band, an exciting band. In our day, I wouldn't say it was conservative, but we played at football games, we would play marches. I mean, we played probably between, and I'm not talking halftime, I'm talking between plays or if there's a timeout. We play the fight song, of course, after touchdowns. We'd also play On Wisconsin. We'd play Across the Field, the Ohio State song. We'd play Go You Northwestern. I think Mr. Hawk had a kind of educational idea in mind that we would expand the repertoire and learn to play a lot of different marches in addition to supporting the football team. And I think today, one of the things I notice, and my son played in marching band in the 90s up in East Lansing, Michigan, the band will split up and play ditties. The brass section will go one way, And also the drum line today is featured in a way that was never done in the 60s. The drum line kind of happened maybe starting in the 80s, where percussion became a real strong part of marching band music. Our drum line did not play separately from the band. It was always with the band and played complete tunes. Yeah, I think we had the same uniform for the whole 3 years. And then they had, I think the band parents raised money to pay for cold weather parkas, and they were melting wool. And I remember games, you know, in late October, early November, the last 3 or 4 games, it might be raining, it might be, you know, completely wet, and those wool uniforms would really get heavy. By the end of the game, you were just, you know, you're like a sponge soaking up moisture. You had to buy, if you were in the band, you had to go to Jerry Noble's shoe store and buy a pair of white Bucks, you know, and you put, you know, like, it was like Pat Boone wore in TV. And you get, you know, that shoe polish that's white, you know, clean them up, wear them for 3 years. And the bottoms of those white Bucks, by the time you were a senior, I mean, they were, you know, really shiny, and the tread was pretty much gone. So, and then after every football game in the rain and the mud, you'd have to clean them up. So this was homecoming. I think it was our junior year. I could be wrong. It was either our junior or senior year. And in those days, the homecoming court would be announced from the other side of the field, from the visitors' side of the stands. And they would come directly across the field for the introduction and crowning of the Queen. And again, in those days, in the 60s, it was Jackie Kennedy fashion. The girls wore high heels, and they wore a beautiful suit or a sheath, and a lot of the girls wore their mother's stoles and, you know, furs and stuff. And it was fashion plate time. And of course, the guys in the homecoming court had 3-piece suits or, you know, sport coats. And the field was grass, and it was muddy that particular season. And it had been raining, and the girls were having trouble with their high heels walking across the muddy field. But they went ahead with it because that was the plan. And the band had practiced a special tribute to the Queen, where the band would bow continuously as the Queen and the court proceeded between this tunnel of band members on both sides. And in the tuba section, our tuba section leader, very conscientious and an excellent musician and fine student, was practicing this high kick where he would kick up on one foot, one leg, and then roll over the tuba, you know, like a big, you know, flourish, a big bow. And the Queen comes down the line, and everybody's, you know, the band is bowing, and my friend kicked up high. He went down, and his feet slipped out from under him. He face planted. The bass horn that he was playing hit, splat. His music went one way. The wind blew the sheet music. His glasses were over here. He's like, you know, completely on the ground. And that was absolutely, you know, embarrassing for my buddy, but it was hilarious in the sense that it was, you know, I mean, it was like something out of It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. Yeah, it was hilarious. And
Louis Hawk was one hell of a guy. He was every bit the gentleman. He was super organized. He was enthusiastic, and he was encouraging. And maybe that's the most important thing I can remember about him, is that he was always encouraging you to do just a little bit better, and being optimistic and telling you that you did a good job. He was really an exceptional human being. That's why I think we had an alumni band for years while he was still around, because after he retired, he'd come back and lead the alumni band at one of the football games. and we always had a huge turnout because people wanted to be there for Lewis Hawk. We were, and I've told my granddaughter this, that's in the band, I think we were a better marching band than they are. They don't pay as much attention to straight ranks and all those sorts of things like Louis Hawk did. When we marched in a straight line, we were in a straight line. But again, we didn't do the entertaining things like the dance moves that they do today. I'm totally delighted with what the band does today. They may not march as well, but they put on one good entertaining show. So there's a world of difference between the band of 1968 and 2023. Once you made band, the only time you had to try out for anything was if you wanted to challenge, you know, to get higher, closer to the first chair. Other than that, if you had years of experience in the band, I don't think you had to try out. I don't remember trying out any time after my sophomore year. But I did have to try out my sophomore year to determine whether I'd be a bass drummer, a snare drummer, a cymbal player, or what. But I was lucky and I got to be a snare drummer. Band had its own bus.
Did they have assigned seatings, or?
Nope, you sat wherever you wanted to sit. And we always had a good time on the band bus. It was a thrill at home games, lining up in the end zone, getting those 4 whistles from... I'll tell you what, we came out of that end zone. I mean, we came out, it was... We were marching, and it was just a drum line coming out. That was a thrill. I always enjoyed doing that.
Where you will see at your marching 120, the 2023 edition of the prize of Tiffin Columbian High School, the Tiffin Columbian Tornado Marching Band, Flag and Majorette Squad.
Take a week of practice in the summer, that's all we did was march. And he could really help we had a kind of a line leader on each line, and that person was responsible for making sure everybody was in a straight line.
So he would kind of look out the corner of his eye and...
He'd march with us for a while, and he'd check each line, and he'd let you know if you didn't have a straight line. And if you were consistently bad, he'd blow the whistle and you go back to the beginning and do it over until you got it. And believe me, in the early days we did it over a lot. So
just wanted to say that as a young girl, all I ever wanted to do was march out on that field as a majorette for Tiffin Columbian Tornadoes. The wonderful moments that I can remember is all the girls and the friends that I made, and as we're out in the field practicing our fire baton and lighting them up. The bigger thrill was when we marched out of the end zone, high-stepping to Smile. And Mr. Hawk made that up for us, and he was so ahead of his times with bringing that to Tiffin Columbian. So it was the thrill of the lights are on, people are in the stands, the football team is out there, and you're marching out, leading the band to Smile. So when we twirled the fire baton, they did turn the stadium lights out. This photo is us on a Thursday night practicing, and we had to practice it. So you brought out your kerosene, and you put your fire batons in the kerosene, and then lit it up, and we just had to practice somewhere, so we did it right down on the field.
We practiced in the park at least several times a week at Hedges Boyer Park in the summertime. But we were just saying, all our outfits were wool and wool sweaters, wool skirts, even during basketball.
And body socks and tennis
Yeah.
shoes. It was hot.
It was really warm.
Hot.
And itchy too.
Yeah, well, that's why we wore the J.C. Penney blouses underneath.
Underneath,
our sweaters.
right.
But they don't wear those anymore.
No.
Probably are much more comfortable than we
Right.
were.
But football was the more nerve-wracking because we were never sure we were doing the right cheer
Yeah, we had to.
for what was going on the field because most of us didn't know much about football.
Always let somebody else start those
Yeah.
sideline cheers.
And you said that was usually
That was Joy.
Yeah, she knew more about football than we did. So we get to ring the bell if we won.
If we won, that's right. That was fun.
Yes, that was.
That was a big
That was
deal.
that neat.
You got to ring it with the players.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody was around.
We got to touch it.
That's where I was going with that.
Yeah. We were at least
We
there.
were, I mean, I think we made a special effort. Don't put this in, but I mean, I think we made a special effort to like not be haughty.
Right,
You know.
right.
I think that was, you have to learn that we needed their support
right,
for the cheers.
right.
So.
Yeah. No volleyball that I know, unless it was in GAA, which you. I
that
think
was just a
GAA was playing in the gym some of the times when we were out doing cheers.
Oh, that
Or,
could
you know,
have been.
doing our cheerleading
So it would
thing.
be after school.
Yeah. It was
And
an after school
And I
thing.
remember GAA, I remember playing basketball in gym class where we only went
Right.
half court.
Right.
And I was so grateful I didn't have to run them. And get to the half court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there wasn't
But there was nothing.
nothing.
You know, had we known, we could have worked our way up. You know,
Right.
it's a whole mental
Right.
preparation for
Right. But we didn't know
varsity sports.
that we didn't know anything else. I mean, we weren't bitter about it or mad. It's just the way it was. You know, I didn't even realize what we had missed till later in life. You know, that would have been really fun to have girls' sports when we were young, but you know there weren't. So that's probably why we enjoyed cheerleading.
Well, back in the 60s all the way through to the 90s, there were 6 cheerleaders between West Junior High and East Junior High. And in 1993, the East and West became Tiffin Middle School and Tiffin Junior High. And at that point, they felt they combined the junior high schools and you weren't giving kids enough opportunities. So they upped that. Cheer has evolved huge since the 60s. Tumbling is a large piece of that. So most all of our kids can flip down the track, and the jumps are a lot different than they were back then. Even when I cheered in the 80s and 90s, they're very different. Just definitely we have our kids on a circuit program, so they are lifting and need all of that to get through their routines. But everything you see on the sidelines at Columbian, we have kept traditional. They are probably the same fight song that everybody did 30, 40 years ago, the same cheers that they've done. We've kept those through the time, as well as the band dances. All of those things you see on Friday night are things that have been here definitely longer than 30 years. So we keep those. Are still very hard. It's very competitive. But the feelings on Friday nights, I believe, are still the same. We still have Teddy Tornado around, still have that relationship with the band. It's probably the same Teddy. We still are very traditional school with those things.
Damian Brockington on the carry.
Yeah, we ask a lot of our guys in the off season, in season. Comparatively to previous generations, it's really a year-round preparation for athletes and coaches. There's not too much of an off season. We're really lucky, as a school district to have the support and schedule and ability to get all of our athletes and all of our students, for that matter, into our weight room really early. Starting in middle school as far as 6th graders, every girl, every boy gets access into our weight room during the school day, throughout the course of the school year, a couple times in their PE classes. And that's really big in teaching some of the lifts, some of the exercises that we do, not only in sports but also in physical wellness and health, for hopefully their future life, whether they become an athlete or don't become an athlete. We choose to elect captains amongst their peers and coaches early in the season. And again, that conversation to our players and program-wide is, class and stature don't matter. No matter what class you are, if people, your peers and coaches see you as a leader and you're elected as a captain, obviously that's really, really important. But if you're not elected captain, it still means that you are a leader of somebody, whether that's of yourself, but also underclassmen and other peers and their teammates. We do a lot of team bonding and different messaging to them to understand. There's 11 guys out there at all times. You got to have 11, whether it's offense, defense, special teams. We try to give different roles to as many guys as possible. The more contributors you have, we feel like that usually develops into a good season. Every kid's different. Every kid has different goals and objectives, and so we want to know what those are as coaches to make sure that we are helping them hopefully achieve those goals, but also have very truthful conversations.
Here in this threesome. Here we go. Come over here, Tyson. Come here, Tyson. Come here, Tyson. You're back right here. Here we go. Yes, Cozy. Here we go. You're on my side. We're the defense. Come to our left. 2 steps. You guys stay there. Here we go. We're going cross face to the right. Speed whip. Offense. Come block us.